So this is for the person that occasionally feels like they're no longer in control. And although that can feel like having a weakness, that's not necessarily the case. Because when that is the belief that you have, that I'm somebody that has no control, that leads you down a path of trying to gain ultimate control over every aspect of your life. And there are some variables that you can't control. For example, how other people choose to behave. Like, let's just use one example. You can't control other people. There are people that believe they can control other people, and you can manipulate and use different tools and tactics to get people to have certain reactions to things, which is not something that's taught here. But ultimately, the one variable that you can control is you. There are some things, though, that you can't stop. For example, there are some experiences that you've been through that have now led to you having a trauma response. All trauma is an incident has taken place and it has altered your behavior. And the behavior that has been altered can either be healthy or it could be negative. So, for example, somebody may develop an addiction, and the addiction that they have developed may be towards the gym. So, it could be seen as healthy. However, them going to the gym is to now get other people to accept them because of the rejection that they faced in their early years. So the behavior may be healthy, but the reason behind it, as we continuously teach, as the root cause, isn't a negative. A more obviously negative one would be an addiction towards maybe a substance. Initially, it was to distract themselves from what has taken place. But then over time, it's now developed into something that they can't stop. Having moments where you feel like you're not in control is not a weakness. Now, going down this route of emotions and avoiding emotions and the healthy and unhealthy things that can be done to avoid the emotions, I'm going to speak on control. Control in this context is not stopping your emotions. Control is being present in the midst of those emotions and being able to think and allow processing to take place. Because, like we taught on in the previous video, where we touched on the fact that if you're able to sit with yourself whilst a situation has taken place that has triggered an emotion, you can stop yourself from making decisions that you would later on regret. And the reason why control is simply being present with your emotions is because emotions don't wait for logic. So if you don't sit with yourself in those moments, there will be no logic. There will be no form of thought or care about where you are, how this is going to affect you, how this is going to affect other people, how this messes with the decisions that you've been making and everything that you've been building, the long-term effects. It just reacts. So it's not waiting. It's not, there's no logic there. When the brain is alerted, a decision is made without you needing to make it. And until you are present with your emotions and present in the situation, you can't override it with a healthier option. So it's either you make the decision or a decision will be made simply by going back into your file and your nervous system picking out what it's used to. So in that moment, in simpler terms, it's reaction over decision. Now, the reaction is something that you haven't chosen, but the decision is down to you. But you can't make a decision if you're not present in the moment. So you have to learn to be present with your emotions, not avoid them, but be present whilst they're taking place. So when you do feel angry, sit with that. When you do feel sad, sit with that. When you do feel down, sit with that. And you start to learn and understand, is this even something that is even makes sense? Or has this just randomly come out of nowhere? And you won't understand you and even be able to accept you if you aren't able to sit with yourself in the moments when things aren't good, because that is also a part of you. So we don't just love and accept ourselves in the moments when things are great. It's in all times. Because then this affects how we relate with other people. Because if we don't feel like we're good enough to sit with ourselves on our own when we're feeling bad, then why would anyone else want to be around us? Because that's what we are actually displaying to other people non-verbally. And it will show up in your character. When I feel a certain way, don't come around me. That's what you are telling everyone else. But if you're able to sit with yourself and people know, okay, where did where did where did so and so go? Oh, well, they normally go off for 2 to 5 minutes, but when they're back, like they can communicate what was going on and that they just needed a few minutes to calm down or to process what was going on, and then they'll be back and they don't need to hide it away. And when people ask them questions, they can understand what's going on. That is control. And remember, we touched on it briefly, but we said that power is the ability to be able to do something and still not do it. Decisions. So now, the consequence of not being present with your emotions is that regret follows. And regret is one of the worst feelings because you often feel regret when you know that you could have done better. So initially, you didn't even give 100%. And the only way that you know that it's regret is if you knew better. Because if somebody doesn't know better, then regret doesn't really exist. It's just they need to learn from this. But regret is in play when the person knew what they should have been doing and they didn't give 100%. So in this context and within this situation, if you now understand that you need to be present with your emotions, then you need to now understand that you can't allow your emotions to then make decisions and react. So when you are angry, you need to now sit with it. Don't just be aware of what's going on after you've just blown the whole situation up. You need to be present from beforehand so that you can see what you could potentially do, but then remind yourself that you're the one that has the power and you can determine how you want to use that. Do you want to use that to just blow the whole thing up, or do you want to just keep calm and collected? And then once you have remained calm and collected, you'll realize that the way that you can communicate how you're feeling will not lead to sanctions. But now let's say you've blown the situation up. I want you to understand that that doesn't define you because behavior is not the same as identity. That isn't your title. That isn't who you are. Does that make sense? So behavior doesn't define you, but you are leaving footprints. People need to simplify things. So the way that you behave, if people need to summarize you in about less than 5 seconds, think about how you've been behaving and then think about the snapshot and the picture that they're going to paint to somebody when they ask about you. So if you're constantly in detentions, you've been suspended, you've been excluded, you've had managed moves, you don't do what is asked of you, think about the picture that they're going to paint. And that just goes for life. If you have a reputation for starting things, not finishing them, things change every other day. There's no consistency with the things that you say. There's no integrity. You say you're going to do one thing, you don't, you're not there. All these different types of things. Think about the picture that's being painted of you. And the picture that's being painted of you is actually your fault. Because if the people know you, then you have given them the evidence that they have. If the people don't know you, then the picture that they paint doesn't matter. But the people that do know you and interact with you consistently and frequently, the picture that they paint about you is completely down to you. Now, when it comes to being in control, it's a capacity game. And like with anything, when you haven't done something before, it's a process of learning, it's a process of adapting to something that is new, new territory, understanding it, failing, messing up, starting and going again. So once you enlarge your capacity, you'll realize that the things that once got you to the point of boiling up, they don't affect you at that stage anymore, and then it's something else. And then your capacity in that area will just continue to grow. Anybody that tells you that they have ultimate control over their emotions and they're lying to you. What they may be trying to say is that they understand how to regulate their emotions and they don't allow their emotions to get the better of them. The goal is to be able to regulate your emotions and to allow them to not control you. So, in summary, when you're present and when you're aware of yourself and you can be present when your emotions are high and they're boiling up, that is when you're in control, and that is what power looks like.